how do you show value? How do you pitch? Like, what are some of the things you do to really get people invested in working with you, the company, or, getting their accounts in general?
We're in the payment processing space, right? So we're putting our hands on people's money. The most important thing at the end of the day is just the person across from you trust you. And that's what, we've really built out here at Fanbasis, is that we and my entire team, right, we come off as the most important thing to do on any call is to get an individual to be able to trust you. Right? You're dealing with people's money. That is the most important thing. They're never going to work with you if they don't trust you at the end of the day. So when it comes to closing clients, working with big players in the space, that's what it comes down to really, is just building out a level of trust and then having, that brand recognition as well. We don't have a negative reputation about us, and holding true to that reputation in the long run as a company, as an individual, for every individual on my company, on my floor, that's the most important thing, is that, we have a good reputation and the people that, we bring on board develop a high level of trust with us.
Welcome back to another episode of the 1% Podcast. I'm your host, Van End.
And I'm Shane.
And today we're joined by my man, Lyle Zullo, Chief Growth Officer at Fanbasis. Welcome to the show, my man.
Thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.
Of course, dude. Well, you've got first up, I love what you're doing at Fanbasis. It's really fascinating. I'd love for you to give our listeners a little bit more info on your story, what you're up to, what you're building, how you guys are doing it. And then I got so many questions for you, man, but let's wait on that one. Just get the audience to get a little warmed up to you first.
Awesome. Yeah. Appreciate the background, guys. Just to quickly introduce myself, I'm Lyle Zullo. I'm the Chief Growth Officer here at Fanbasis. A little bit of background on myself. Originally grew up in New Jersey. We're based down here in Miami now. Been here for coming up on about 8 years now, which feels crazy to say. It feels like it's been a snap of fingers, but time moves when you're having a good time and you're building amazing things with an amazing team. But essentially kind of had a passion for working in startups since, early in my college career. Had worked at a couple different startups in an internship capacity doing growth and business development. Got to see, companies at different stages, seed, Series A, and really just had a love and passion for, building from the ground up, right? Being able to, really put your name on something that, you're able to build and say is, hey, I can put my name on this and I was able to accomplish this. So coming out of graduation, was really looking to work at a startup. It was post-COVID. So the job market was definitely a little bit rough at that point. I had, gotten connected essentially with someone that I knew from high school. I actually bumped into him down here in Miami, and he told me he was, basically building out an MVP for a product called Fanbasis. So when he told me this, he was somebody that I had known and since high school, and he had built up his first company when we were 13 years old. So I remembered that and, basically told myself, this is something I want to make work and I want to get involved with as quickly as possible. So, kind of dropped everything I was doing and jumped on ship on this team. Came on, essentially was working part-time at the beginning while the MVP was being built, building out essentially what the growth strategy would look like from, that point where we were able to launch and build out a client acquisition strategy. So, came on in officially full-time, at the end of 2021, early 2022, and have been leading all growth initiatives here at Fanbasis since. So, a little bit about the platform. There's definitely been a bit of an evolving of what our company is over time. We essentially started off as our model was similar to like a Cameo on steroids almost, right? We created a marketplace that allowed, celebrities, influencers, athletes, anybody with any following really and monetizable fan base to build out a storefront where they can sell, digital experiences to their fans and followers. So, we had a lot of, A, B, C-list celebrities that were, essentially using our platform to monetize their fan base by vehicle of fan experiences, interactions, and digital products. What we saw over time essentially was that the info space was really starting to build itself out. Individuals were utilizing the following that they had built off social media to, be able to sell digital products and services. So what this means, you guys understand this space very well, but, there's a lot of different dimensions to it, right? But high ticket coaching, mentorship, courses, paid communities, and, a number of other vehicles as well right? We saw that this space was really blowing up, and we wanted to get into it as much as possible. So what we did was we identified one of the biggest pain points that we saw in that space, and that was payment processing. And looking at our existing platform, we had built out a payment processing infrastructure. So we kind of decided around early 2020. That we really wanted to dive into this space, into the payment processing space. We saw that a lot of these businesses, had bottlenecks where they were getting shut down, they were getting holds, they were getting reserves from the traditional payment processors that they were using. And, we essentially identified that we could build out, a payment processing infrastructure specifically for, the digital product and service and the digital entrepreneurship space. So you can kind of think of us now as a one-stop shop for any digital entrepreneur, who's selling any sort of digital product and service to run their entire business A to Z through our platform.
So I initially, funny enough, got connected to you because I was talking to a friend of mine who thought what you were doing was cool and we should meet and have you on the podcast. But the other thing is that I was also looking for a new payment processor. And I know exactly what you're talking about because I'm in some masterminds where there are guys who literally have over $600,000 or more locked up in their Stripe accounts, and literally Stripe will not release funds to them. What do you think about that, man? Is Stripe bullshit? Like, what's going on with all these different platforms and their inabilities or lack of desires to support people that are doing online work? What's going on in the space?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't want to ever say another company's, bullshit or anything like that, right? But
I'll say it.
To put it to put it in simple, right? Like a company like Stripe, they're not exactly, focused on this space, right? They want to go work with larger enterprise companies where they're very familiar with their business model, right? The online space is, frankly, it's new, and, bigger traditional processors will see that space as high risk, right? The reason being why is they don't understand, exactly how these businesses are built, right? There's so many different business models, right? But there's often times where businesses might run webinars, they might run challenges, they might just do high ticket transactions, every once in a while, right? So a company like Stripe, they're not built specifically for this. They have, their bread and butter, and that's not the online coaching and the online mentorship space, if you will, right? They see this space as high risk and they want to stay as low risk as possible as a business, right? The way that we approach this space is that we don't see the digital space as high risk. We frankly, we see it as a space that is almost misunderstood in a way, right? Because traditional processors just have a lack of an understanding for how these businesses actually operate, right? So I think us, our entire team really does come from the online business space. We're all very familiar with the digital product and service atmosphere. Many members of our internal team have actually worked on different info products or worked for these types of businesses in the past. So not only do they very much so understand the pain points that a lot of these businesses are undergoing, but we also understood how to build our payment processing infrastructure so that, the businesses that have experienced these pain points in the past wouldn't experience these moving forward with Fanbasis.
It really is. I think you painted it perfectly as far as the corporations, right? Stripe's been around for a pretty significant amount of time. Their bread and butter is corporations, people with less disputes. I don't know really what it is because Stripe's not really at fault for the actual disputes as far as, paying back or receiving the actual money. It comes from the client. So it doesn't really make sense on why they wouldn't be bringing on these digital marketing companies, these coaches, for quote unquote high risk, which would just be essential disputes. So I don't really understand that aspect either. But transitioning into a company for where you focused on, let's say CBA level celebrities here and influencers compared to the complete transition of a payment processing company. I'm curious on why. Was it strictly like, hey, we actually have something here? And was it money? Like, hey, this is where most of our income is coming in. Let's double down on the business. Or, hey, these celebrities aren't doing X, Y, and Z, or this wasn't what we planned. Why the transition?
Yeah, really good question. I think a lot of it came from just us, having our ears down to the floor and, being ready to move on our toes, if you will, right? We were in a space, at that time where we were competing against, 10 other companies that don't exist anymore, right? So, we were seeing where the market was going with our old model, but at the same time, while we were having a lot of success doing it, we were growing, we were frankly in a position to take over that space. We kind of just saw that the market cap was a lot bigger in the space that we're currently operating in, right? It's an extremely quickly growing space. Online education as its own as an industry is, really blowing up. Kind of a lot of individuals liking to move away from the traditional education and kind of move more into online and find different ways to make money on the internet. Obviously, with AI is rapidly increasing the rate at which that this is happening as well. So I think it was around that time we really just had our ear to the ground, and because of who we were networked with, who we had known, just by being in the space previously as well, we were able to hear a lot of what the pain points were for those types of businesses, right? We had individuals that were getting shut down left and right. So what we did was, we brought a couple of them on to the platform to utilize. And essentially from there, we're able to build the product around what these individuals specifically needed in terms of a tool set, right? Traditional processors, they have their tool set and other businesses have to figure out a way to use it. Whereas Fanbasis, we kind of built it the other way around. We saw how these businesses wanted to operate and how they were operating. And we built our product specifically to make that easier so that they could streamline all their operations through our platform. And at the end of the day, build them tools that's going to help them make more money, right? That's our, mission at the end of the day really is to be a platform that somebody uses where you can say, hey, because of Fanbasis, I'm able to make XYZ amount more money. So, that's what it really comes down to. And then what led us into this space was, having our ear to the ground, hearing what the market was telling us, and then going and building our product and client acquisition strategy around it.
So outside of accommodating to these people who essentially cannot use Stripe anymore, and there's other competitors out there as well, but outside of accommodating to those individuals, why choose your company compared to a powerhouse like Stripe who's not in that arena?
Yeah, I mean, it's really at the end of the day, it's like we're built specifically for these types of businesses. We want to help that these businesses grow and scale. Like I said, Stripe's bread and butter and other, bigger, I don't even want to say bigger, but other more traditional players in the space, in the payment processing space, they don't want to touch this space. Like you'd mentioned, Stripe, you're no longer able to sign up as an online coach or mentor anymore, right? So that's a big factor of it as well, is that we're built specifically for this space, a space that a lot of other, companies are essentially shooing off or looking to push away. We're embracing and we're building for, with open arms essentially. So, that's a big part of it. I could get into kind of some of the more specific value adds that we bring to help businesses make more money. But at the end of the day, it's like, we're building the tool set specifically for these types of businesses. And, we're still at the forefront of where we are now. We just, recently raised our Series A funding round, but we're very much in the mindset that we're just at the forefront of what we are, the tool set that we're going to build, that specifically helps these businesses make more money.
I got a question for you, because I think this also comes back before we get too far away from the stuff you just mentioned. Mm-hmm. You're figuring out how to build this business. What would you say has been the biggest challenge as you've been leading growth at Fanbasis? Like what's the biggest things you guys have had to face, or you personally, and how did you wind up overcoming it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's challenges every day, so it's hard to say. It's hard to say which is the biggest one, but frankly, I know we could pause this out. I'm just trying to think what the biggest one would be here.
Take a second if you need.
Could just be the business in a nutshell too. Right. Learning from the actual failures, the front end, the back end, the processing, finding the right people.
I do have a little bit of a more pointed question I could probably ask
Yeah,
you,
let's
like,
go with that, because I could get into about 50 different challenges, but yeah, we could. I'll think on it, and if I come back to it, I'll allude to it later on.
okay, well, all right. So let me go ahead and we'll do 3, 2, 1 count, and then I'll go with. All right, ready?
Then,
So, Lyle, I know that from kind of everything you were just mentioning and a little bit of the intro you were giving, you guys worked a lot with some big influencers, and you've probably seen a lot of different things. I even know your company, actually, from what I do know in our conversations, they help out with helping people like figure out how to maybe go to market or do product launches. And I imagine that was really difficult. So here's a question that I have for you that might be really helpful to some people in the audience, for instance, is what would you say is some of the most common mistakes you see creators make when they're launching maybe their first digital product, or maybe some really controversial advice you have for an initial launch? What would you say to some of those things?
yeah, for sure. I think the biggest advice that I would give anybody is just focus on the value of the product that you're able to provide. I think I see a lot of digital entrepreneurs kind of going the route of, let's kind of just throw something together here and then go really heavy on sales and marketing, right? And frankly, that might have the impact of being able to have a nice successful launch where you're able to make a couple $100,000. But at the end of the day, if you're not providing value back to your end customer, you're not going to build long-term credibility within the space, within your customer base. So, when I tell people when they're starting digital products and services, you have to focus on the value first, right? It might be a slower burn to get to where you're looking to be at the end in terms of revenue targets, but you're putting yourself in a much better position in the long run when you really focus on value and fulfillment, right? If you're spending time, making sure that every single client who bought into your program, to your high ticket coaching, to your course, or to your paid community is getting, more value than they paid for, that's when you're going to have something that's going to be there for the long term. If you're just focusing on the front end, you're selling, obviously building out sales teams, having good marketing practices in place is very important. But if you build that out without building out the proper fulfillment and infrastructure for the business, you're setting yourself up to fail in the long term.
I like it. And I'm curious, with that being said, you've personally brought on a lot of agencies, you've onboarded a lot of creators. What would you say is maybe one of the hardest, and hopefully this isn't too general, what's one of the hardest pitches you've ever had to make? Like, how did you win over a client? Because I feel this goes hand in hand, right? You're talking about providing value. How do you show value? How do you pitch? Like, what are some of the things you do to really get people invested in working with you, the company, or just, getting their accounts in general?
Yeah, it's a great question. Really, at the end of the day, we're in the payment processing space, right? So we're putting our hands on people's money. So the most important thing at the end of the day is does the person across from you trust you, right? And that's what we've really built out here at Fanbasis is that we and my entire team, right, we come off as the most important thing to do on any call is to get an individual to be able to trust you, right? You're dealing with people's money. That is the most important thing. They're never going to work with you if they don't trust you at the end of the day. So when it comes to closing, clients, working with, big players in the space, that's what it comes down to really, is just building out a level of trust and then having, that brand recognition as well of, we don't work, we don't, I'll put it like this. We don't have a negative reputation about us, and holding true to that reputation in the long run as a company, as an individual, for every individual on my company, on my floor. That's the most important thing, is that, we have a good reputation, and the people that, we bring on board develop a high level of trust with us. So as we were, growing, or we're at the kind of forefront of our rapid growth, when we didn't have as many clients, as we didn't have that brand recognition that we maybe do have, it was definitely a little bit more difficult. But I think, what I was able to do and what the team was able to do at that time was just really develop good relationships with the individuals that we were looking to work with, and kind of prove ourselves first before we would expect anything in return from them, right? Kind of going out of your way to show, hey, I'm really motivated to work with you here, and not expecting anything in return. That usually leads to the best relationships and best clients with us in the long run.
How do you establish trust quickly?
Well, quickly is important. Sometimes it's not something that's you can't. It's hard to obtain in a day or in a couple minutes or whatever it might
Sure.
be, right? But I think action, right? You build trust by showing action and showing proper intention. When you're working with somebody, when it comes down to our team, what I train people to do is before you're even talking, much about Fanbasis, before you're getting into, what we've been able to build here, you want to get a good understanding of what they've been able to build. That way we can best properly provide value and communicate the value that we can provide back, right? So, for us, it's really important to get a good understanding of what their business is, what their current bottlenecks are, and how we can help them out. And by us showing that type of appreciation and will to learn to understand what their business looks like, that I think subconsciously builds a lot of trust, because it shows that we're asking questions. We want to know about their business because we want to find out where we can help out the most.
Some big questions there, Vin. It's going to dissect on how to build trust.
I think it's important, right? He's 100% right.
Those are massive questions there. We should ask that to every client. I'd be very curious to see their answers. Wow, I want to take things back here to the mental side of things. I'm gonna play Vin's role here.
Don't you play my role? Go away.
Well, you saw what 10 other competitors were doing and essentially failed. You made this transition to which is amazing because it wasn't high demand. There was tons of people about a year and a half ago that Stripe just made the announcement within less than 30 days and said, we're canceling everything. And we're not taking on these types of clients, these specific ones. You guys saw that and you grasped that opportunity. So go back to that moment. I want to know what it took, or if you were involved in that decision and was it just a gut feeling and you saw this opportunity, was like, we got to go. We got to make this shift from what we're doing now. And we got to go full steam ahead to this. Yeah. 90% of our audience is entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs or wanting to be business owners that need that mental transition. Take me back to that time and saying, okay, which was 2024, about a year ago, right? Maybe a little longer. What was it?
Yeah, great question. We had something that was working. We had something that was moving in the right direction. But us as a team, we have extremely, we're an extremely ambitious team, right? We're not complacent at all. When something's going well, we're always thinking, how can it be going even better, right? So when we were in this space, we had a business model. It was working. We were moving in the right direction, but we had, bigger aspirations. We want to be $1 billion company, right? That's one of our next goals that we're coming up upon now. We saw a quicker way to get there, with a sustainable business model behind it and a great vision and a path towards being able to execute it. So, we were able to move quick into that. But, frankly, it wasn't just a one day snap of head type of thing. It was us learning over time, right? Failing quick and efficiently, being able to rebound, being able to, like I said, have our ears to the ground, and understand when the right opportunity comes, when to pounce on it, right? It wasn't the first time that, we had made decisions that, shook up a little bit, the core of the business, or made decisions that had, changed things for the better, but we always are looking to improve and move quickly. So was this a bigger jump than some of the other ones that we had made previously? Yes, but it wasn't out of the, or I'll put it like this, it wasn't something that we weren't mentally prepared for, right? Because we had already been, very nimble. We move fast and efficiently. So when we have something that we want to go do, we're able to, the team is able to get together and accomplish a lot of big things and big changes very quickly.
All right. I got another one cocked up and ready for you. I think this is going to be a good one too, because this is all about our audience and even a little bit of me, because I'm kind of in a little bit of a position like this. But let me ask you this. If a solopreneur or somebody who is a creator came to you, maybe they had no money in their pockets and they just came out with this great idea, phenomenal premium product, what is the go-to-market playbook that you would give to them? You've seen so many things come across your desk. You've been a part of so many successful launches. How would you help this person?
Yeah, the first thing I would say, I mean, it's I'm sure there's other intricacies of the specific case study that we could get
Yeah,
into
yeah.
here, but I think the first thing would be to build a personal brand, right? If you have a really good digital product that's going to provide a lot of value back to it, frankly, like I said, it's nothing at the end of the day if you can't sell it, right? So, the best way to do that, getting off the ground is to build a personal brand around it. So whoever the skill-based influencer is or expert behind this digital product, I would definitely suggest, building out a personal brand. Typically, when people do have, digital products that work very well, it's teaching others how to replicate something that they've done in the past. Typically something, that's helped them, that's teaching somebody else how to make money, right? Or how to run XYZ type of business. That's what I like to say is a lot of the most scalable and long-term businesses that we have on Fanbasis are businesses that are teaching other individuals how to run an XYZ type of business, right? So when you look at most of the ones that have had the most success on Fanbasis or been able to scale and grow the proper way, and have really good things moving ahead of them as well in terms of growth, is that you see that there's typically somebody with a big personal brand behind it, right? So what they're going to try to show their audience is, hey, I was able to accomplish this, and then here's the path of doing it essentially. But building out the personal brand, there's, YouTube is a phenomenal platform, for long form when it comes to, long term education, right? Being able to grasp that audience before even selling the digital product is something that has provided a lot of value back to these businesses. But Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, even as well. There are a number of different platforms where these creators have the opportunity. We even see a lot of creators that have really good models built out on Snapchat as well for client acquisition based on building a big brand. So there's no shortage of platforms. So what I would suggest is become a thought leader, become someone that people are going to listen to. When it comes to being an expert on a certain topic. And the other thing I would say is if you are starting at zero, you don't have that personal brand built, is, don't try to be a master of all. I would say go be that master of one specific thing. Find your niche. If you're starting at zero, find something that nobody is better than you at. That way you are the top voice in whatever the specific niche is, because that'll propel you to the top better than anybody else. And then if that, specific demand really grows out as well, you're automatically the top player right there. So
I love it. I think it's great advice, especially to somebody who would probably want to start getting into the space. Because honestly, at the end of the day, the world is moving so rapidly that unless it is a physical profession, which will also be taken over by robots one day, if it's not something like that, you should be moving into the space of how can I get something out there digitally? How can I service something that is more of a software or an electronic product? Or how do I translate and move skills and launches and business growth into something virtual? So I think that honestly, this is such an important thing for people to be considering, even if they're not already doing this.
right.
You guys are actually into a space that I don't see really getting replaced by any sort of company out there. Like you have competitors at that point, but once you've actually built that trust with your customers, they're there, right? I mean, that's it. You're a payment processor. You take my percentage, my money's in there. I have my go-to people that I can connect with, call it a day. Like that's what, really sticks to it. As far as your advice about building a brand for a new company, spot on, especially for 2025. This is it. You need to be the face, or you need to find somebody that can be the face of your product and sell it, because that's what sells right now.
Right. Yeah,
Phenomenal.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, to piggyback on your point about, how payment processing works in general, I think something that's really unique about us too, that you have never frankly seen in the payment processing space is, the level of support that we provide for the businesses that utilize our platform, right? I always say to our clients, we're not just a piece of technology that you're going to use, right? You could think of us almost as an unpaid partner within your business as well, or an unpaid consultant within your business, right? We have we have given resources and set in processes in place, essentially where we will go and consult with businesses. Hey, this is how your exact business is working. Here's how to best integrate Fanbasis into whatever systems you're currently utilizing. Here's what, additional systems you can be utilizing to help grow your business as well. So we hired people specifically out of this space, who are well trained and have had success in the past of building out these different digital products and services
Oh,
based businesses. So
pause. Shane, there's an echo coming from your side for some reason.
Oh, really?
Lyle, were you hearing that, or was it just
yeah,
me?
I heard that as well.
Okay. It seems like it might be resolved. Is that resolved now?
Did it just happen, or you guys still hearing it?
I'm not anymore.
Yeah,
I
no,
think it was just a couple seconds.
we're good. Lyle, can you just pick up right where you started hearing the echo come in, and we'll cut it and edit that.
Yeah. So, sorry, I'm trying to think of. Yeah. So, I mean, you could essentially think of us, sorry, let me start that again.
That's okay.
Still good too.
I always essentially tell my clients, don't think of us as just a piece of technology. You can think of us as, an unpaid partner in your business or an unpaid consultancy, within your business as well. We put resources and time and effort into place to, not just have people utilize our platform, but help their businesses on our platform grow and scale, right? We hired a number of individuals who came right out of the space, who have experience working on these types of businesses on the operations side, on sales, marketing, growth. So, these individuals are specifically tasked to help basically take existing systems that businesses have, best integrate the Fanbasis tool set within them so that they could best utilize it to make the most amount of money, and also take whatever existing systems that they have and find ways to improve them as well, right? From a consultancy standpoint, we want to see the businesses on our platform grow, right? We only make money if they do. So, we want to essentially act as that unpaid consultant. But again, going back to building trust, right? That, going out of our way to help these businesses grow and scale, that's something that's going to build that long-term trust that's going to keep clients from ever thinking about even going anywhere else.
Yeah,
I love
smart.
I love it, man. Well, here's another question that I have for you. What do you think? You work with a lot of leaders, right? And I'm curious, what do you think are some of the biggest things that leaders tend to do, maybe just out of habit, that you would consider a massive waste of time? Like, where do you see people going wrong?
Where do I see leaders going wrong? There's a couple different directions I can go about this one, but give me a second on this one. I think I could probably go back to the challenge question. That one's kind of come to me, and then I could probably get back into this one as well.
Sure.
But cool. Do you want to ask it again, or do you want me to just kind of go right into it? Like
you can just go right into, just do a countdown and go right into it so that they know where to edit.
Okay, cool. We can do 3, 2, 1. So the biggest challenge I think I've seen, as we've grown the company here is, the last, 9 months really have just been, rapid growth. In the first 6-7 months of 2025, we've been able to 6x our monthly revenue through the platform, right? So things have been really growing at a rapid pace. When kind of coming into 2025, the team was much smaller. So as we continued growing and scaling, we had to build out number one, teams, and number two, processes in place, right? There was a lot of things that I was doing myself that a couple select members of our team were doing ourselves that we wouldn't be able to do, at scale, to be able to be at the point that we are. So I think for me, one of the biggest challenges that, I've been able to undertake here the last 6 months, and really have had the opportunity to, frankly, is challenges that I've always kind of been waiting for and been excited to have on my plate. But is figuring out how to take what I do and then get other people to essentially build the same processes in place, right? So number one is hiring out a team, right? Getting people inbound, being able to properly evaluate talent, being able to decipher what they what they can be able to do, and what things, number one, I can hand off, but other things that I might not have the skill set to do that other individuals might be even better than me at. So hiring is one thing, and then building systems for scale is definitely another one. Like I said, there was a lot of things that I was personally doing, or a couple of members of our team were doing, but if we need to be having 10x the output of what the team is, there's only one of me. So building out these different these systems, I now oversee a team of about 15 individuals that are all executing on processes that I've built based off what I was doing all myself at the beginning. So that's definitely been a fun challenge, is finding the things that I've been good at and teaching other people how to do them as well, and getting them to a point where I'm able to now focus on much higher level activities as well. And then these higher level activities are always new challenges as well, because they're things that I haven't done in the past. They're challenges that I haven't had on my plate before. So there are often times where there's no roadmap for us as a young team here or who haven't been in a position like this before, to go accomplish. But we're always excited, and our whole team mentality really is any challenge that can get thrown at us, we're ready for it, and we're excited about it to go conquer it.
I love it, man. Listen, this has been a really phenomenal, enlightening look into Fanbasis and what it is that you guys got going on there. We got a few minutes left, so I want to make sure that I ask you a final few questions here. So one of them being this: what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Yeah, good question. So best piece of advice I ever received, I had somebody, a mentor of mine, I want to say I was about 19 years old. And I was really, at this point, I was just taking as many mentorship calls as I could, and just really trying to get advice from as many different people who have had success in all different spaces. Frankly, I didn't know what on earth I wanted to do yet. And she told me one thing. She said, be the rainmaker. I had no idea what that meant at all at the time, but what she told me was, be somebody that people will always come to as a resource, to connect other people together, right? I'm always looking for ways personally to help out other individuals. That's personally a big part of like what fulfills me, is being able to help other individuals achieve what their goals are. A big part of that goes into Fanbasis, right? We see businesses that we know want to hit $1 million in a month, and they employ some of the strategies or the technology that we provide with them, and they're able to then go accomplish that. Being able to connect other people and them having, a high level of success based off the relationship that happened. That's something that, people will always remember, is you're the guy that connected us. You're the guy that helped me do X, Y, and Z. So that piece of advice that I received, however many, seven years ago, whatever it might be at this point, has really stuck with me to this point, and I think shaped a lot of how I go about my day-to-day activities, how I go about helping people, how I go about my relationships in life in general. And I think it's helped Fanbasis, a lot get to the point that it's been able to now as well.
I love it, man. My mentor always told me that relationships are rocket ships, so I'm certain we share a very similar thought process. So here's another question for you. And this is always one of my favorites, is obviously the name of our podcast is called the 1% Podcast. The reason being is that we don't believe you have to be a billionaire to be a 1%er, but we are aware that there is a 1% version of everyone and everything in this world. So when we like to ask this question of what is your version of a 1% life, it's really that thought of how are you trying to excel greatly? What's the thing that sets you apart from 99% of the rest of the world or other people? What do you do to achieve a 1% version of life?
Yeah, great question. I think resilience is really the big thing. There's been a lot of times where, I'll say, forgetting even a personal level, but on a company level, but then there's been other companies, in the space that have failed or gone under, and, we've kind of been able to come out on top, right? If it was easy, everybody would do it. I always tell myself that when I'm at a point where I'm pulling my hair out over one thing or another. I always just kind of remind myself, hey, you'll be able to get through this, and you'll come out on top, and you'll come out a lot stronger, right? You'll have learned something, very valuable too. So I always tell myself, if it was easy, everybody would do it. But I think the resiliency aspect, within myself, but also within Fanbasis, just as a team mentality in general, is extremely important. We just have that mindset that whatever challenge comes on our plate, we're going to take it and we're going to come out on top. We're not scared of anything. We're not scared of failure. We're ready to take anything on. So, there's always going to be, mini failures in there, but I think, you fail quick, you fail early, and you fail fast, and you'll be able to put yourself in a position to come out on top every single time. So that resilience aspect is, I think, what separates myself, and definitely what separates the company here in general as a collective mindset.
I love it, man. And let us get to the really important question here. Where can people connect with you? Fanbasis? How can they get more involved? How can they check out your company? What are some of the ways that people could really take the next step with you guys if they're interested?
Yeah, 100%. So I'll put this in a couple different aspects. Number one, if you are an individual who is owns an online business, so high ticket coaching, mentorship. If you sell a course, if you have a paid community, if you own a digital agency or a service-based online business as well, you could start off, head to our website, just fanbasis.com. We'll have a link below as well. That directs directly over to that. Also, me personally, I'm pretty straightforward and easy to get a hold of. I'm always happy to talk to more like-minded individuals and entrepreneurs. So I'm on LinkedIn. My name is Lyle Zullo. I'm a one of one. There's no other Lyle Zullo in the entire world. So pretty easy to find there. On Instagram, I'm Lyle_Zullo_23. And on Twitter, I'm Lyle Zullo23. So feel free to reach out whenever. If there's any more information that you're looking to get about Fanbasis, I'm always happy to talk to other like-minded entrepreneurs who want to figure out ways to grow and get better.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. Stick around for another minute afterwards. I got another thing or two to tell you. And I really appreciate you sharing your insights with us and our audience today. Guys, as always, please go check out the guest's company. I think Fanbase is phenomenal. I actually have recently enrolled, and I'm looking really forward to using their payment processing system myself, knowing that I will never be banned now because I'm no longer on Stripe. So this is very exciting for me, and I hope it's exciting for you guys too. With that being said, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and let us know what you thought of the episode. And tune in for another episode of the 1% podcast, where we release them every week. We'll see you on the next one. I'm your host, Vin End.
And I'm Shane.
And that was Lyle. See you, everybody.
Bye, guys.